Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like first by giving a special gratitude to Dr. Robert Clappage for asking me to address this distinguished gathering of experts and scientists who are on this forum, the Sharing Knowledge Foundation Forum. I just want to say that I was deputized by Prime Minister Hani El Mulki to patronize this event, and the speech I'm going to give represents the Jordan Atomic Energy Commission, so this is not his speech, so these are our views, but I think they are congruent, most probably, to the Prime Minister's views, because at the end of the day, we are working within one government and facing the same challenges. So allow me first to extend on behalf of myself and the government of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan a warm welcome to all of you. We are really indebted for your presence here today. Today, Jordan is privileged to host the 11th Sharing Knowledge Foundation Conference to be convened here at the Dead Sea. And I believe this is the second conference you convene here. Our assembly here is a tangible evidence that progress has indeed been made in the endeavor to engage developing countries in Africa and the Middle East in the global dialogue on science and its palpable correlation with the most pressing developmental challenges the world is facing today. And indeed, these challenges are very serious. The adage, knowledge is power, holds true. Knowledge is the power to adapt to change and develop innovative solutions to problems. Evidence can be found in the irrefutable association between prosperity and scientific research and development. I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the Sharing Knowledge Foundation, which was founded explicitly to enhance scientific development in Africa and the Middle East via the establishment of a knowledge-sharing platform designed to facilitate the exchange of knowledge with more developed countries. According to the Foundation's statutes, it, and I quote, considers that there can be no sustainable development if we ignore the aspirations of a growing part of humanity living to the south and east of the Mediterranean Sea to have access to the basic living standards we enjoy in European countries. Our ambition is to reinstate cooperation and dialogue around the Mediterranean, which has become the most unequal border on earth and a cemetery for many migrants fleeing war and poverty. End of quote. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, knowledge sharing could be an important component of development cooperation if it is well balanced and designed. It is important to focus knowledge sharing around specific problems or issues rather than providing technical assistance by expatriate consultants. Such work can be driven by a comprehensive partnership among different knowledge providers. We need to identify the opportunities and the challenges we face together. Rapid urbanization, education requirements, water scarcity, and the need for sustainable energy systems, building proper health services and a sound transport infrastructure. These are crucial issues for most of our countries in Africa and the Middle East. But in all these areas, new approaches and innovative solutions offer unprecedented scope to those who look ahead. However, none of these problems can be addressed properly without political equity. Let me illustrate how the framework for sharing knowledge might work, taking energy as an example. The powerful industrialized countries can control the energy future of the world so long as they can. But also the industrialized countries have the most capability to alter their technological base being able to utilize many sorts of technologies, high, medium, or low, for this purpose. To them, many might be appropriate. Appropriate changes include more efficient and rational use of energy, for which much opportunity exists, and as a result of which large savings can gradually be made. In addition, the industrialized countries can shift to new modes of energy generation, in particular, renewable, solar, wind, fission, nuclear fission, and in the foreseeable future, nuclear fusion. The developing countries, with their generally lower energy use and weaker scientific, economic, and technological bases, have less direct conventional control over the world's energy future, but have a more justifiable call on whatever low and intermediate technology-based resources exist. Having fewer technological options naturally available and more pressing needs, they find it more difficult and unnatural to modify their energy strategies in ways that don't fit with their other essential day-to-day activities. Oil and natural gas are the fuels of choice for developing countries and are, in fact, the natural fuels of intermediate technology, though not often recognized as such. The consistent strategy option for the industrialized countries might be to revert to a determined program to reduce permanently their use of carbonaceous fuels, namely coal, oil, gas, via a combination of a more rational and efficient energy use and a gradual accompanying shift to alternative energy sources. These sources are solar and nuclear, and both are taking shape today in most developed countries. Both will be needed, and both tend to be more electric-oriented than the present mix of fossil fuels. Such a shift dramatizes the problem of how to live with nuclear power. And specifically, I'm talking about fission nuclear power. But the problem was with us anyway, and would not go away no matter what some might wish. Perhaps recognizing its present necessity will aid in the resolution, which is in any event societal and moral. If solar power eventually turns out as successful as we hope it to be, and nuclear power turns out to be unnecessary, fission nuclear power will then wither away naturally. On the other hand, the developing countries can gain several ways by this strategy. Better interim access to oil and gas, which are more easily matched to their present economies, rather than either nuclear power or the large solar schemes presently being developed, though many small ones are broadly applicable and will fit the immediate needs of these developing countries. In addition, more affordable energy resources when they are needed most. As they develop, they too will need to shift to non-carbonaceous fuels if everyone plans carefully. The buildup of greenhouse gases need not strain the global environment beyond its endurance. In all of this, the developing countries will find it in their own interest to be energy efficient too. This strategy of the industrialized countries consciously switching their technological base could avert the global climate change, in which everyone loses, but especially the highly organized societies. It also goes a long way towards making the developing countries full partners in the global enterprise of managing global affairs. That is important to us all because people in many developing countries see themselves as standing at the side of a railroad track, watching the train of the industrialized nations going by at ever-increasing speed and they, the developing nations, being increasingly incapable of running alongside. It is better and even in the interest of all parties to have everybody on board this train and to plan to operate it for the long-term strategies. Facing these challenges effectively requires engagement. It calls for support on several fronts, especially in knowledge sharing and capacity building. In response, an increasing number of global institutions, think tanks, and research institutes are putting in place knowledge sharing as a core strategy to facilitate achievement of development goals and objectives. We do believe that furthering scientific knowledge will not be achieved in the absence of solid and sustained partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, for my country, Jordan, economic development is a priority. Despite all the regional challenges, we have pressed forward to meet several urgent needs, to grow jobs, to improve the quality of life through continued reforms and partnerships, whether political reforms or economic reforms. Let us keep in mind that every one of the top 10 refugee hosting countries is an Asian or African country. Jordan is now the world's third largest refugee host. And let me give you some recent statistics. We are now a country of around 9.25 million people. 6 million are Jordanians, 3.25 are non-Jordanians, out of whom are 1.4 million people who are Syrians fleeing the Syrian civil war, in addition to around 400,000 Iraqis, in addition to an equal number of Palestinians and some people coming from Gaza. This has increased pressure on Jordan's infrastructure and resources beyond any imagination. Specifically, the provision of potable water. You know, before even this refugee crisis, we are classified as the fourth poorest country in water in the world. So we really have to work on providing potable water for this additional surge in population, which is almost 1/3 of the total people living in the country today, provide also energy, health services, and proper education for the children of these refugees. These burdens are ones that our regions and the global community at large have to deal with and overcome together. Perhaps such a challenge can be turned into an opportunity via proper knowledge sharing. You and your peers from the region and from around it can light the way by bringing know-how and insight to future opportunities, by working collaboratively with international partners to find solutions to meet these great challenges. In Jordan, we have recognized early on the pressing need to overcome the energy challenge. You know, we have really lived two energy shocks. The one was in 2003, when we were completely dependent on Iraqi oil, and after US invaded Iraq and the country fell in chaos, we lost the Iraqi oil. Then we switched to Egyptian gas, and we became totally dependent on Egyptian natural gas. And then when the Egyptian revolution took over, 2011, we lost the Egyptian gas totally, and almost on a weekly basis, there was an attack on the Egyptian gas pipeline coming to Jordan, and we had to live on a more or less an hour-by-hour basis, switching to heavy fuel oil and diesel, which is the most expensive form of generating electricity, and we were incurring $5 million every day. So over the last 5 years, we have incurred a total of $8 billion in debt because we had to burn diesel and heavy fuel oil, and we had no choice either to shut off the electricity or just keep on burning expensive diesel and heavy fuel oil to produce. So that was really a very hard lesson, and I lived actually at the epic of the moment in 2011. I was a Minister of Energy then, and I lived the epic of this nightmare when we lost the Egyptian gas and we had to manage our affairs basically on day to day. So with all these hard lessons, we have developed a national energy strategy that aims at increasing the utilization of alternative energy sources such as wind, solar energy, which is now coming on the high in this country, tap into our national oil shale deposits. We are reverting to producing electricity through direct burning of oil shale, despite some of its severe environmental consequences, and introducing nuclear power as a part of a comprehensive energy mix and as a means to enhance Jordan's security of energy supply. The introduction of nuclear energy in countries such as Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, or United Arab Emirates clearly demonstrates and emphasizes the importance of sharing knowledge and experience with industrialized countries in order to make this successful. Ladies and gentlemen, in the seventh discussion paper entitled, quote, Developing Human Resources and Education Imperative for Jordan's Progress, end of quote, His Majesty King Abdullah II has encouraged the initiation of a dialogue on reforming education and realizing and moving towards knowledge economies. There is an emerging consensus on the need to put knowledge sharing at the center of the development agenda. To make this vision attainable, we have initiated new projects in urban development, water infrastructure, and moving also to water desalination. This country has never done that, and we have started moving into water desalination projects, and a diversified long-term energy mix. There is increasing evidence that partnerships are key in bringing all these projects to fruition. We look with admiration to some of the successful projects that enhance development and scientific research, notably Sesame, the synchrotron light for experimental science and applications in the Middle East, which is a third-generation synchrotron light source and is the first major international research center in the region. I know that you have had a successful visit to Sesame this morning, and we look forward to Sesame's inauguration on May 16th, next week. The construction of Sesame is a tribute to the successful collaboration at the governmental level and the collective efforts of scientists from a wide range of disciplines and regions. Indeed, I would definitely focus on the big cooperation between the Middle East and Europe in building Sesame. Its construction is in itself a triumph, and its anticipated value to academia and research will be another. Sesame's success is a life example of collaborative knowledge sharing between both shores, north and south of the Mediterranean, in building a state-of-the-art facility that will be utilized for raising the culture of scientific research in this region to the highest level of global standards. I will mention specifically the cooperation that we had between Sesame and other synchrotron labs in Europe, and also CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, who have opened their doors and really dedicated a lot of the time of their scientists, engineers, and technologists to train our engineers, technicians, and scientists from the region, and also help in the design and supervision for the installation and construction of the machine. And we are happy that next week the machine will be starting its first operations. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, allow me to welcome you once again to Jordan and to this important conference. I do look forward to the invaluable contributions of all the respected speakers and guests, and anticipate with pleasure a very interesting exchange of knowledge and expertise that will undoubtedly reaffirm the values of the sharing knowledge foundation and will help realize this vision, which we all strive to achieve. Thank you all.
So, are there questions or comments? You have made everything in our conference very substantive, and I hope that some people would like to. Yes,
Thank you very much for your very clear and interesting and wide-ranging talk. I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail into Jordanian plans for developing nuclear power.
Yes, tomorrow actually I'm going to give a presentation on this. So tomorrow in the afternoon, I think we have a session on energy and the future energy in the MENA region and Jordan, and I will be giving a half-an-hour talk on nuclear energy. But indeed, we are serious about it because, to be frank, I can tell you the story of energy in Jordan. I've mentioned in my speech, our national electric power company accumulated around 8 billion starting 2011 on. So we are moving to diversify the energy mix. We were totally dependent on Iraqi oil, 98% till 2003. Then in 2011, we switched to become totally dependent on Egyptian gas. Now, we also want to increase our shares of the local energy mix. So solar is coming very fast, wind, oil shale, we are going oil shale, and nuclear. We are going to go for nuclear because also we have large amounts of uranium deposits. So we want to pursue all options because today this country is still importing 97% of its energy resources from outside. The only good thing that happened last year is when we started operating our liquefied natural gas terminal. And I will show this tomorrow in my speech. So we shifted gradually from burning diesel and heavy fuel oil to LNG, which dropped down the cost tremendously. But still, even today, we are still importing 97% of our energy from outside. But tomorrow, I will elaborate in more detail about the energy situation in Jordan. And we will have actually the Secretary General of the Minister of Energy, the Deputy Minister, who will also be shedding more light on the energy situation in Jordan.
Thank you very much. Other questions or comments?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about the sequencing of priorities. You mentioned there's so many needs in Jordan: power, water, I think social infrastructure too. We have needs in healthcare and education and so on. So how does the government decide in terms of its prioritization? What's the sequencing? Where do you begin, and what's your priorities going forward?
That's a good question. Actually, they are all priorities, and the work is in parallel on all, because they are linked together, energy and water. You know, we are the fourth poorest country in the world in water. But despite, I will say objectively, our Ministry of Water has done a good job, you know, in really providing water to all households without basically cutting water off from districts and so on. We sometimes have a water schedule in the summer for several, basically, districts, but in general, water flows. And to be frank, I think this country, and maybe His Excellency, our French ambassador, because I know they focus on water projects and the EU, I do believe we have very, very good water management systems here and maybe among the most efficient as a water resource poor country. So we work on all fronts. On water, we are moving to desalination. On energy, as I've mentioned, we have to work on an energy, comprehensive energy strategy. But the good thing about all this is that we have focused on education over the last 5 decades. So as Dr. Klapisch have said, we have well-trained manpower. We rely more on our human resources to find solutions and to move. And definitely, I can tell you in an energy, 5 years ago, Jordan was in a very dismal situation. And even we didn't have cash to pay the shipment for diesel and heavy fuel oil one day or the other. Now with LNG terminal operating and so on, and moving into oil shale and solar and wind, things are improving and at a much higher pace than we were expecting. Our plan is to have solar and wind, maybe, within the next 8 years, is to basically feed 20% of our electricity needs. And we are following up all the developments in solar and wind energy, particularly, the new storage technologies, to see definitely if new storage technologies come in and basically the ability to introduce more solar and wind into the country will be viable. I think the country will go into that. So all avenues that will be open, and following the latest technological developments, the government is pushing that and following this track right on.
I have a question about this pipeline project to bring water from Saudi Arabia to Amman. Is this completed already, or is it in?
I'm not sure, to be frank, but I don't think there is discussion about the electricity grid connection with Saudi Arabia.
I'm talking about the water.
Water, I'm not sure, to be frank. I know there were some issues. Maybe I think Mrs. Zoabi can discuss that because she was the Secretary General of Water. Maybe you want to comment on that? I'm not, frankly speaking. Mrs. Zoabi maybe might speak. She was the Secretary General of the Minister of Energy, and she of Water, and she knows a lot about it.
Can you tell your question again?
The water pipe between Saudi Arabia and Jordan.
The DC you mean? It is not between Saudi and Jordan, but we share the same aquifer, and we have signed agreement with them that we can use the shared aquifer for the DC project. But actually, this is Jordanian pipeline, and the cost is where it's BOT project, and all of it is Jordanian money. But their permission to use the shared water. But if you talk about desalination still the red to dead, it is in the very early stages. This is desalination, yes, with the potash, about desalination, right? It produced 5 million MCM, and it is operated and done by the potash company. But a small one, it's only for their use.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your very interesting speech. This morning we had a very convincing visit of the Sesame project, which is no doubt going to be a focus point, a regional focus point for research in the region. But in a broader perspective, what do you expect as added value economically to the economics of Jordan and possibly the other partners on the project? Thank you.
Yes, that is a very good question. If you talk about a direct economic value in terms of generating power or something, no, but definitely there will be a lot of indirect values and spin-offs coming out of Sesame. To me, first of all, it will put the scientific culture here of research in this part of the world into a new platform. Our research was, to be frank, in many universities in Jordan and in the region was more of a local, regional. And many university professors were not really basically standing to the challenge of doing research that will really feed into the development of the country. In many cases, it was basically I would just do research to get promoted, and I get my basically tenure or I get my promotion from assistant and so on. Sesame opens a very wide window to the world at large, and particularly to the developed countries, mainly in European labs and Japan and US, where it basically, I would say, you rub shoulders with the big guys and see how they work and how they tackle problems. And basically, most of the work that is done there is to really promote standard of living and to solve energy problems and basically water, health, materials, and so on. So indeed, it's a big window to the larger world, rather than living more or less in your own compartment and feeling happy about it. This is one. In addition to that, Sesame will have 24 beamlines. Some of them will be used for nanotechnology. Some of these lines can be used for research in pharmaceutical industry, developing new medicines, new drugs, and so on. So the scientists definitely will be working on these, and I see in the future that there can be also some direct value to some of the industries here in the country and in the region, particularly pharmaceutical, medical, and also health sciences.
Yeah, Mr. Toukan, if I may have a question, is about this Red Sea, Dead Sea project.
Sorry?
The Red Sea, Dead Sea project.
Yes.
Where do we stand here? I mean,
yes.
Because, I mean, this looked so promising. And could you tell us, I mean...
Sure, I will say something, but also I will leave again the floor to Mrs. Zobi to elaborate. From what I know, but maybe I don't know the details, my country, the government of Jordan, was very keen first on doing a trilateral Dead Sea, Red Sea project. First, to get water needs for the country, do a big water desalination project on the shores of the Dead Sea, south, and also to save the Dead Sea, because the Dead Sea is really dying. And this will have a severe ecological consequences, not just on Jordan and the region. I think it might, from what I read sometimes, it might also have some global consequences, because this is really very subtle ecological balance here. So in addition to the avoiding ecological, I would call it catastrophes, that people say in 2040, 2050, if things go on this, the Dead Sea will completely be dry. Because today, the flow of River Jordan into the Dead Sea is 1/10, 1/10 of its value compared to the 1950s. So the feed in water is shrinking by big margins. And the sea is shrinking every year. I guess 80 centimeters every year. It's just the sea level is going down. So the government is doing this for water projects, desalination. They were expecting to get 2 billion to come from the Red Sea into the Dead Sea, and then have a water project south of the Dead Sea, desalinate water and pump it to Amman. Unfortunately, funding has not come in. I know that there was a trilateral, basically concept agreements that Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, and Israel, Jordan, and Palestinian Authority would work on it. Maybe Her Excellency would know the details. This didn't work out. So now the country is basically trying to do its own limited project. So now they started with phase 1, to start with Aqaba, go northeast, build a pipe, water pipe, do a small water desalination there, and feed the needs of the city of Aqaba as phase 1. They want to also test the ecological, basically, or environmental consequences, because some environmentalists said that if you bring water from the Red Sea into the Dead Sea, there might be some disturbance in terms of the sulfide concentration, because the sulfide concentration in the Red Sea and Dead Sea. So environmentalists were basically ringing bells about that. So they want to try this on a small scale and see, and if it succeeds, then it will be followed by phase 2 and phase 3. Maybe Mrs. Zoabi would like to elaborate.
Thank you, Your Excellency. About Red to Dead, it was like what His Excellency said. It was about big project where produce enough water for the three countries, which is Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. But again, because of the cost and because of many things, the environmental impacts and many things, we end up with what they call the phase 1. But actually, it is not the phase 1 that was in the original project. At that time, there is a problem of mixing the brine with the Dead Sea. So we decided when we were negotiating this, why not to have a pilot project where we can test the impact of mixing two different types of water with different saline concentrations. So the idea was one of them is to bring water to the Dead Sea and to see what will be the impact with the mixture. But again, this is also another project. The phase 1, it's actually a water swap project, and they call it a water trade in Israel, I think. It is where we give the water to Israel where there is a shortage of water. It is in the south, they need water for farmers, and we need water in the north. So where they will take desalinated water from area called Risha, it is 40 kilometers above Aqaba, and they will give us raw water where it needs treatment and it needs transport, because what we need water is in the northern governorate. But this also project will cost the government of Jordan I think $200 million US to transport this water from Tiberias up to the northern part of Jordan, and also Jordan, if they will need water for Aqaba, because it is desalinated 40 kilometers, so they have to pay also the cost of water. From my own opinion, it is the risk in Jordan in both sides. Because if the Israeli don't need the water in the south, and it is written in the agreement, it's up to there is a limit of 30 million to 50 million is nothing to what we need. And also in the northern part of Jordan, they will give us the same amount, as much as they take in the south, also depending on if the availability of water up. But in Jordan, we are building a huge infrastructure for this only 30 million. And in the South, Jordan will sign off-take agreement with the operator. So if Israel said, no, we don't want, because they limit the cost of the treated water, then Jordan have to buy water where they don't need actually in the South. But this is what happens. But we hope we have this project because it is needed, but the money, as he said, is very expensive. I don't know, my colleague, Qusay Iqtashat, he also was involved with this project and he had to add something.
Actually, there is a presentation on this the day after tomorrow, and it's in detail, so why spend the time on it now? Okay? Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you all.